Introduce you now.
Okay.
This is a friend of mine, I'm really happy to say. And when I met you, I was thrilled to death. And somebody said, tell Yvonne, I was in a studio running around, and somebody said, ooh, there's a phone call. Tell Yvonne this if you see her. No one had introduced us.
Right.
I had no idea who you were.
Oh.
And then Brooks says, you never met Yvonne? I said, no. And he said, Wayne, this is Yvonne Craig. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Yvonne Craig.
Hi.
Thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you.
Now, tell me about you.
Okay.
You were Batgirl. That's what I remember you from.
That's because when your hormone level shot up at a certain age, I was the first thing you saw in something sprayed on.
Oh, you and Adam West.
Well, his wasn't quite sprayed on.
I chose you, boy. Oh, my. Speaking of that, you have a picture for me, full-bodied, of you in Batgirl costume.
Absolutely.
When did you start in show business?
Whoa.
As a small girl, I mean film.
Film?
Film, just...
Yeah, because I graduated high school when I was 16 and joined the Ballet Russe.
Right.
So that's show business.
Yeah, that's show
sort.
business.
Right. And
where the masses saw you.
Yeah, about 20.
20 years old?
Yeah.
What was your first job?
The first picture I did was a film with John Wayne's son, Patrick, called The Young Land, Y-O-U-N-G, although I've seen it spelled Y-U-N-G.
That was the Chinese version.
Yes, by people who were, didn't know. And it wasn't the first picture that came out. The second picture I did was a thing called 18 and Anxious, because in those days they liked titillating titles. She was neither 18 nor was she anxious, but they called it that anyway. And that one came out before The Young Land, so it looks like I did that one first,
Sure.
but I didn't. It took them a year to cut The Young Land.
Did you do anything on TV before Dobie Gillis? Because I know you're on there. That was
Boy, I did.
like a semi-regular.
Yeah, I did a lot of those. I did, I think, 4 of them. And I looked like I was a semi-regular on 77 Sunset Strip because I did 4 of those. But yeah, I had done live television. I did live TV, just at the end of live TV, and I tell you, I only did one show, and I can't remember whether it was a Schlitz Playhouse or whatever it was, but Everett Sloan was in it, and Mark Goddard. And I saw Mark Goddard the other day. He was from Lost in Space. And I saw Mark Goddard not long ago.
I know who he is.
Yes.
I know who he is.
And we had a scene together, and I was supposed to fold up this note and pass it to him, and it's live television. And in the rehearsal, I folded it 4 times. And in the performance, I folded it twice, and he went up on live television. And now we're stuck with the teacher, Everett Sloan, saying, what's in that note? And he's going, blah, blah, blah. And I can't say what's in it because I've passed it to him and I don't want anybody to know. And Everett is not telepathic. He doesn't know.
You threw him off just because you folded it different?
Yes, because he knew he was supposed to put it in his pocket, and now it wouldn't fit. We talked about that the other day. He said it was just the worst thing that ever happened to him in life. And I said, live television was the worst thing that ever happened to me. I mean, everybody was so uptight and so nervous that you had to...
ad-libbing a fold. That's all he had to do.
Well,
that's all he had to do was ad-lib a fold, put it in your pocket there, Mark.
Right.
Holy mackerel.
Anyway, we both did not look back fondly on that.
When did you meet Elvis?
The first picture I did with Elvis was a movie called It Happened at the World's Fair.
Was that before Batman?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you worked with him twice. I
worked with him twice. I did It Happened at the World's Fair. That was just kind of I wasn't his leading lady in it. I mean, I was one of the girls that he was kissing and singing to. And it was interesting doing that because he was very aware of his audience. Mm-hmm. And he said to me at one point, could you come a little closer because my audience expects that. And so I thought, isn't that interesting?
Wow.
I mean, he even knew then, what they expected and what they wanted of him as that persona.
Colonel Tom pumped him full of that, didn't he?
Well, it was an interesting experience working with him because, among other things, we did a scene together, and I always go and watch dailies, and just to see whether the makeup and the hair and everything looks right. I mean, I don't go to watch performance because I think if you know what you're doing, then you know what you're doing, and you shouldn't be in there critiquing your own work. But I went in to see, I had just gotten my hair cut, and I went in to see how I looked. And we'd shot the scene together, And I thought, God, I don't know why. I mean, he doesn't even work. I don't know why he isn't working. This is just like phoning it in. This is terrible. And it didn't feel like it was clicking at all. And I went in to watch myself in dailies, and I came out never having seen me. He is so riveting on screen that he was the only thing you watched. I mean, there was just that something. And so I thought, he wasn't phoning it in.
You were like all the other girls. Come on, Mars needs women.
Get out of here.
I can't wait.
You're not going to let me live this down.
How many years were you on? How many years did you do the Batman episode?
Just the last season, 26 shows.
26 shows.
Yeah.
And I went out to find some tapes. It's not on videotape yet. All of the original.
No, but
Batman.
I have all of them.
You do?
That Fox just gave me about 3 years ago. They pulled from the original negatives, and it's gorgeous color.
Really?
They had originally asked me if I wanted them, and I thought, I don't keep stuff.
Yeah.
And so I said, no, I don't want them. And then I thought, well, one of my nephews is a film major. It was at that time. He's a filmmaker now, but he was a film major. And I said to him, do you have any interest in it? And he said, well, sure. So I said, yes, send them to me, and so we have them.
You've got to have those.
Yeah.
Tell us when you first heard about Elvis Presley.
Oh, this is so embarrassing because I'm just a late bloomer in every way. I studied ballet, so I was very well versed with classical music. I mean, I listened only to classical music because that's essentially what you dance to. And so I was on tour with the Ballet Russe back when ice covered the earth, and I came home to visit, and I said to my sister, I heard some interesting music. And she said, really? What was it? And I said, boy, I don't know. It was this guy singing, and it was about blue shoes or something. And she said, oh, please, it was Elvis Presley. Do you live under a rock?
Well, your sister would know.
Anyway, she said, everybody knows who he is.
Everybody.
But I didn't. I didn't until I worked with him.
And you worked with him how many years later?
Oh, years and years later. I mean, years and years later.
Were you excited?
No.
Really? You took it kind of casual, huh?
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
My favorite movie was Kissing Cousins. And you were in that.
Yeah, yeah.
And didn't Elvis play 2 roles in that?
He played 2 roles, and it was really interesting because he played a blonde and he played his blonde cousin. And that was kind of insightful. He played his blonde cousin, and Elvis, who was always on time and knew his lines and never screwed around, stayed in his dressing room, wouldn't come out. We finally thought, what is going on in there? Well, he was afraid as a blonde we would laugh at him.
Really?
Yeah, and so he was really very shy about coming out and doing that. And so when I talked to him one day, I said something about, in Disneyland, and he said, I've never been to Disneyland. And I said, you're kidding me, you've never been to Disneyland? And he said, well, no, I couldn't go.
Elvis.
And it was, because he thought that, crowds would all... And, I felt sorry for him. And then I got to thinking, no, he could go, if he were willing to give up that persona, he could wear a blonde wig and go, and no one would pay any attention to him. So he was sort of making his own jail.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
But he liked that. He liked being who he was, didn't
he did. Yes, he did. And I've never seen anybody... I've seen film on Mick Jagger that was amazing in the same way that Elvis is amazing, because Mick Jagger was very aware of where he looks like he's just, out of control and having a wonderful time. He knows where every fan is. He knows when people get up on the stage. He knows how close they can get to him before somebody is going to intercept them. I mean, he's just very aware, and so too was Elvis.
All right.
Okay, now tell me this. You worked with Elvis and you felt sorry for him. Did you take him to Disneyland?
No, I did not take him to Disneyland.
That's just an aside. But tell us the story. Now, was this during the first movie or the second movie?
Oh, I know what story you want to hear.
Well, can I say this?
Yes.
Tell the story where you called the cops on Elvis.
Okay, all right.
That's cool.
Elvis did not personally invite me to have dinner with him because he had a problem with rejection. And so he would always have Joe Esposito ask anybody that he wanted to have dinner with if they would have dinner with Elvis.
Sure.
And so he said, Joe came over to me and said, would you have dinner with Elvis? And I said, sure. And so he came to pick me up. Now, he came to pick me up in this white pearlized stretch Cadillac thing. And Joe was driving, no, Richard was driving it. Anyway, they came, knocked on the door, and I went out and saw this atrocity sitting out on the street. And so now then they opened the door for me, and Elvis was in the back. And as I got in, the cushions of the floor mats went whoa. So it had lots of cushioning. I mean, it was like soft, mushy stuff. And so Elvis was sitting in there, and he was smiling. I mean, he really had a great sense of humor about this. I mean, he had very kind of dry wit. And he said, I figured you'd really like to see this. So here we are in this limousine, and he said, would you like something to drink? And he only had Pepsis. And so he had Pepsis in the thing, and he pulled out this little bar, and we had Pepsis. And so we drove up to his house, and we had dinner in this mansion in Beverly Hills. I'm sorry, in Bel Air, up on St. Pierre.
Was this like he was just renting this place?
Yes, he was renting this place, and the guys, he and the guys lived there, but they made such a mess of every place that nobody ever wanted to rent to them again because they just didn't. They were kind of throwing stuff around and tacky and trash the house, actually.
It's a rock and roll tradition.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And now we know Elvis started it.
Yes. Anyway, we were sitting in this baronial dining room with this table that had to have been 20 feet long, and I thought, oh my God, I hope that he's not going to sit way down there. I'm nearsighted, I'll never see him, and I mean, you need a megaphone. So in point of fact, he sat next to me at the edge
on
of the
corner,
table.
yeah.
And because it was a first date, we really didn't have a whole lot to say to one another. And so there's just lots of, sort of cutting and chewing. And it was really, I mean, then you're very aware of chewing noises and
in a big
knife
room.
noises. And
the acoustics were great.
Anyway, I was glad that dinner was over, and we went in to look at television. And we watched television with the gang of guys and their dates for a while. And then Elvis said, well, it got really noisy and rowdy. And he said, well, come back to my quarters. So we went back to where his room was.
Yes.
And we're sitting watching television, and it was an old movie or something. And he really brought out this at least in me. I don't know whether it was lots of women or just me, but you really wanted to protect him. He seemed very young, very naive, very unworldly. So I said to him, Elvis, this is not a good idea. I mean, it's okay and it's safe with me to bring me back here, but Hollywood women are not all to be trusted, and you really should be very careful who you bring back here because, I mean, there are two of us, we're alone. Anybody can say anything happened, and then it's up to you to prove that it didn't. And so I said, you should be more careful. And he said, yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So,
thank you very much.
Anyway, yes.
Sure will.
So now it never occurred to me that I should not be lecturing this man who was probably older than I was, had been a star for a long time by then, and who knows. Anyway, so I thought I'd done my good deed. And then we're watching this old movie, and I look over, and he has fallen asleep. And so we're sitting cross-legged on his bed, and he's fallen asleep. So I turn out all the lights, turn off the television, I go out. As I'm going down the hall, Joe Esposito is coming to pick me up to see if it isn't time for me to go home. Yeah. And he said, I said to him, listen, Joe, Elvis fell asleep, and I turned off all the lights, but you need to get him in bed and undressed and in bed right, because he has an early call in the morning. And he said, okay, did you turn out all the lights? And I said, yes, all the lights. And he said, Elvis likes to sleep with the light on. And I thought, I'm not his mother. I don't know that. But I didn't say that. I just said, yeah, well, okay, there are none on. And so he said, well, I'll fix it when I come back. So as we go out the front door, he opens the door, and there are 5 Bel Air patrol cars with guys with their guns drawn, with a bead on us.
Jeez, ready to shoot.
Yes. And he turned to me and he said, You didn't touch a switch over by the headboard of the bed. I said, I touched every switch in the room until all the lights and the TV went off. So anyway, the next day on the set, Elvis came over and sheepishly said to me, I understand you called the police because I fell asleep in your face.
That's a true story.
Yeah.
So did you date him long?
No, not really. I mean, we were doing a picture together, and we would have dinner, and we would see a movie together.
Sure.
But no. And at the time that I did not let anybody know. I mean, I just thought he had been so exploited by everybody who ever went out with him. I mean, they all wanted something from him.
Right.
and I just wanted his good company. He was a nice guy.
Real laconic, though. I mean, he didn't speak much to you, you know.
Well, no, he got better. I mean, it was just that first dreadful meal that I thought would never end.
Yeah. Do you make a lot of noise when you chew?
No, but you think you do. Because, I mean, nothing is happening. There's no room presence. There's just this chewing and cutting.
What could you say? How you been? What have you been doing?
Yes.
I haven't seen you in an hour.
Yeah,
What the
yeah.
hell?
And I thought you were a lot darker. You've taken off your makeup, and now I realize you're a pale person.
Somebody told me his hair was not black originally.
It isn't black. Oh, God, I also gave him advice about that. Are you ready for Ann Landers here?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. I said to him, you know, Elvis, my hair photographs as dark as yours does on screen, but I have dark brown hair. And yours, because you dye it black, because he had roots, like about 4 inches of roots.
Mm-hmm.
I said, you know, if you were maybe to dye it dark brown, it would look the same, but it wouldn't eat light the way his did.
Yeah.
And he again said, yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. I'm just renting this hair. So his hair was actually brown or something?
His hair was a medium brown. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was an ash brown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the Colonel or somebody thought it would look better black?
I don't know.
Well,
I don't
that's
know.
another story, isn't it?
But he dyed it, and then, you know, of course, he when he was going with Priscilla, they both dyed their hair. I mean, she dyed her hair jet black.
We talked about that.
She was
too.
stunning.
Yeah, she's very pretty.
She's pretty now, and she was pretty then. I mean, it doesn't matter what color her hair is.
No.
She's dynamite looking.
She looked like a real pretty girl from the 50s and 60s.
Yeah,
I mean, the
yeah.
hair gave it away. Holy mackerel, another different style, please. But we talked about that, didn't we? You
Yeah.
and Priscilla, and
Yeah.
I know another woman who claims to have known Elvis, and you're all the same.
Yeah, I
Dark
think maybe
hair.
we look like his mother.
I didn't know what his mother looked like.
I don't know either, but I have a feeling that she was probably dark.
Really?
Yeah.
Isn't
yeah.
that something?
Yeah.
You travel and travel and travel. That's mostly what you
Yes.
do now.
Yeah, and it's mainly off the beaten path, sort of, I guess, considered adventure travel.
But what amazed me when we talked is that you take no visual records other than just what you
Just
see,
in my
perceive,
brain.
and it's in your head.
Yeah, and I figure if it's worth remembering, it's stored away there, and it saves you from being attached to a viewfinder.
Yeah.
And I just want better. I want
It tends
a
to
bigger
separate,
vision.
doesn't
Yes,
it?
I think so. I think
But-
so. And we went whale watching down in San Ignacio Lagoon, and I must say that the day we were out on a boat with just people who were truly interested in the friendlies,
Yeah.
they came up to the boat. And the day that we were out there with the same group, but with people who were only interested in photographing them, and they had these cameras attached to their eye, the friendlies didn't come near us. They went to the other boat where the people were.
What kind of whales were they?
They're Pacific gray whales, and they go down there and breed and calve
Mm-hmm.
and then come back. And so they have their babies, and because they have a memory of having been petted, they'll let you touch them. And because they have a memory of being touched, they will sometimes lift their babies up to the side of
Really?
the boat. Yes, so that you can pet their babies. Yes.
Maybe they're saying
Their babies are huge. Their
Well,
babies
yeah.
are like
Oh.
20 feet. They don't look like tiny little babies, but
Yeah.
they're very.
So you honestly think that they want you to touch their babies? Is that-
They seem to, yeah,
Really?
yeah. There are some that don't want to be bothered, and you can tell which those are. And then there are some that interact with the tourists. There aren't many tourists now, unfortunately. I mean, fortunately for some people, I guess, but unfortunately for the whales, they're going to be able to put an airstrip in there and fly down. Right now, it takes forever. You take a plane, then you land, then you get in a Land Rover, then you get on a boat, and finally, in the dark of night, you wind up, and all you hear, because it's dark when you get there, you get in a tent, and all you hear all night long is, and they're blowing.
Yeah.
And you know that when the morning comes, you're going to see them.
Yeah.
And it's just great.
Oh,
Yeah.
that would.
Yeah.
What's your favorite place to go to? I mean, you travel.
Oh, I have something that the French called mal d'Afrique. A girlfriend of mine tells me, I only want to go back to Africa. I just keep going back to Africa. The first time I ever landed, we went to Kenya back when it looked like out of Africa. And there was just this really peaceful feeling, and I said, I'm home.
You feel comfortable there?
Oh, yes, yes.
You said you went on a walking.
I just came back from a 3-week walking safari in Kruger National Park, Umfolosi in Swaziland, and in South Africa.
Yeah.
And it was just sensational. We would hike about some days 4 hours, some days 6 hours, and you get very close to the animals. You don't get close to the cats because the cats run. But I saw the rear end of a lion who had a kill. But
aren't you concerned about that?
No, I'm not.
Are there guys with weapons?
There
or
are
dart
guys
guns
with
or-
weapons, and if they were to fire that weapon and kill an animal in the national park, they would be fired immediately. So it is
not even to save your life.
no, because you're not supposed to put anybody in jeopardy so that you have to save their lives. You don't go near rogue elephants. You don't go near rogue rhinos, and you don't go near rogue Cape buffaloes.
Besides parasites getting under your clothes, we talked about that.
Oh, how about the ticks? Yes, we had to look for ticks all the time.
A very social activity.
It's called social grooming.
That's right. The baboons walked by and said, all right. Any close calls ever?
No, but it was an interesting call. We were about 40 feet from white rhinos. There were 4 of them, females. And we had been told that white rhinos are the only animal that doesn't do a false charge. Once they've committed to a charge, they charge you. Elephants will charge and come right up to you and then stop. And you watch their tails. And if their tail is drooping, they're relaxed. If their tail ever gets completely standing out and their ears go back, then they're aerodynamically ready to have at you, and they will charge you.
Yeah.
But the rhinos are unpredictable, and so they said you must always keep in mind when we're in rhino country that you need to know where the trees are in case you have to climb a tree, because they're also short-sighted, and if you can get up in a tree, they can't remember what it was they were doing because they can't see it anymore. So the guide said, there they are, and it was wonderful. They were about 40 feet from us, and he said, sometimes if you will just make a bit of a noise, they can't see, but they feel the thump and they hear it. And we were where they couldn't smell us.
Yeah.
And so he thumped his rifle on the ground and whistled more breath than whistle, sort of.
Yeah.
And they came like dogs.
Wow.
4 of them with their little ears flipping, trying to figure out what was this noise and who we were. They're very curious. Anyway, they got about 20 feet from us, and then the tracker stood up and waved his arms to make them go away because and they took off in the opposite direction very quickly. But
man.
They're big and they move fast.
I was working at a theme park called Marine World Africa USA, and they had a place called Rhino Island, and I kept teasing the head curator of the animals, when's he going to get me some rhino horn? As an aphrodisiac, it's very expensive. So he said one day, you got a minute? And we jumped in his boat, and he drove it right onto Rhino Island, where there was the biggest, and I agree with you, they are big.
They're huge, and they are so agile. I couldn't believe how quickly they can move.
Well, Peter was his name. He told me what to do, and he was going to take his penknife and chip off some of the rhino horn, which, as we know, is hair.
Yes.
Well, it's just hair. And,
I know,
and
but
he
I mean...
took a piece. Well, let me tell you something. This rhino just stood there. He said to me, hey, Wayne, here's what we're going to do. I'll take my penknife. I'm going to chip off some horn, but you have to not subdue, but anyway.
Divert him.
Yeah. He told me.
You're the decoy.
What I did was I scratched the inside of his left rear leg.
And he liked that.
He leaned into it. Let me tell you.
Isn't that funny?
He got all glassy
Well,
eyed.
now, was he...
Well, he was used
Did
to
they
having...
drug him?
No.
That's what
It was probably
but
my
he's used to
aftershave.
people or something?
Yeah, they work with him quite a bit, but
Oh,
still,
okay. They're still wild animals.
Yeah, and they would still charge, but they had been
Yeah.
used to this. And Peter said, no, it's okay, it's okay.
Isn't that
Then the
something?
female started to circle us. And he said, don't let the female get you in between him and her. And I said, why? And I'm scratching away, boy, thinking I'll scratch her too. He says, no, and she'll lean into you and in between him, and you'll just pop like a tube of toothpaste.
Yeah, they're huge. They're huge. They're like buildings.
Yeah, well, he enjoyed it very much.
Yes,
He got
yes, that's funny. And you did get the horn.
Yes, and then
Dare
I
I
lost
ask, what did you do with it?
Well, it's as an aphrodisiac, and after we're off the air, I'll tell you how to use rhino horn as an aphrodisiac.
I see. I would not pass that on to people. Actually, it isn't. We all know that, and we don't want their little horns missing.
No, we don't.
No,
we don't know that. We don't know that it doesn't work.
Oh,
that was the whole
please.
point of my experiment. I really want to thank you for coming. We've only got a couple minutes.
Oh, wow.
I told you the hour would go by
Yes,
just like that.
yes,
I
it did.
promised.
Yes,
You want
fast.
me to take you home?
What will my husband say?
I've written down a few things. Anyway, I do have to remind everybody that this is the last season night. Yvonne, thanks very much for being here.
You're welcome.
I
Thank
really
you.
had
I
a great
enjoyed it.
time.
So did I.
I really like you very much. But I want to thank everybody for listening.